Sarah and I are out here again. I think today's the day after Earth Day.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a look around, see what we can find. It's hot today. I think it's over 90. It's a little bit later in the day than normal, but I've been reading all morning and talking about what I've been reading with Sarah, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about that here at some point today with Sarah. Mainly because it's from one of my favorite authors and one of my favorite anthropologists, and deals directly on the kinds of things that I'm interested in studying, particularly here out on the Greenway around the Leon Creek. There's a cardinal up in the tree singing its little heart out. Oh,
That was cut short.
it was cut short. Just kind of looking over in these areas, and this is where one time after a run, Sarah and I just came to have a glance and noticed the first snake we ever saw over here, which is a little garter snake, and have not seen one again since then. It's so hot today that I'm not convinced we're really going to see anything, but one, it's just nice to get out and do something, especially being cooped up all morning reading, which was, in my opinion, fantastic. Sarah read an article last night that I recommended to her by Vanessa Watts on indigenous place thought, which is one of my favorite articles, and so we spent some time this morning talking about that. And then I was reading an article by Singh for my this is hot. For my graduate course in ecological anthropology, and that ended up reading the whole thing out loud to Sarah, and then we talked about it for like an hour and some change afterwards, because it's just such a good piece. Really kind of captures the things that I'm interested in, and is, I don't know, just very emotionally evocative, and there's spray paint here, which is new. And so spent some time talking about that this morning, because we're both social scientists. Sarah has her PhD in sociology from Temple. Why don't you explain what you studied, Sarah?
Oh, so I specialize in gender and sexuality. And in particular, I was also interested in health. And so I was looking at the social construction of fitness. In other words, what do we think that a fit body is, and how do we understand, or how do we know what we know? So who are the experts? But then also thinking about, what does it mean when we add gender into that mix? So what are the kinds of bodies that people are idealizing for men or for women, and how do we recommend people attain that through these practices, these exercise practices, which is kind of interesting to think about now, given that we're in this moment of time where people aren't able to go to the gym, and so they're doing a lot of things like we're doing right now, being outdoors or managing their practices differently during this time. So that's kind of what I did my dissertation research on, interviewing experts and doing what we call content analysis, which basically means I was reading a lot of magazines and analyzing what they were saying about bodies and fitness.
All right, we're back at our typical roofing bit, so I guess I'll pass it over to Sarah and I can flip. I'm not sure Sarah is quite there in terms of sticking her hand under stuff to lift it up.
No.
This one you can't lift up without using your hands, but the other one you can use the snake hook for. This is the one we found garter snakes under, and not now.
No.
Which is not surprising, because it is hot outside. So we came over to check these old bits of fencing, and they are gone. And something tells me that they went this way because this is all new, and I'm right. It's right here.
Oh, wow.
So they built a homeless camp and used some of the wood from there to build like some, I don't know what. Oh well, things change. And I had mentioned reading an article by Anna Singh earlier, and she's an anthropologist that's published some really great books, one being Friction, and the other being one that is of special interest to me, which is called The Mushroom End of the World, where she is studying multi-species relationships in regards to matsutake mushrooms and the different capitalist and non-capitalist markets that they move through in the global matsutake trade. It's a really great ethnography, and is a big inspiration for my work. And the article that I had read today, this morning, is called Arts of Inclusion, or How to Love a Mushroom. And I love the title.
Yeah.
Because it gets at something that I'm really interested in. And one of the things that she's arguing is, we're living in this global mass extinction at the moment due to anthropogenic climate change and other anthropogenic factors. And if we're going to conserve species, people actually have to care about them first. And of course, fungi are part of that story. Most people don't notice the mycorrhizal cosmopolitan cities that live just beneath the surface of the soil, and we really only experience fungi in its mushrooms, or when its reproductive parts emerge above the ground. Sorry for the crunching. I'm going to move out of this little leafy area. And so she is in part arguing, as she does in other work, for this art of noticing, or really paying attention to the world around you in various ways, like art. Creating art is one way that does it. She talks about taxonomy in the past, and how taxonomists, they often drew these really beautiful illustrations of the animals that they were describing, which is a particular art of noticing, and I think something Sarah and I were talking about earlier, something that's been lost. By noticing and caring about mushrooms, you're creating a particular kind of environment, particular kind of relation, and you're also creating all these different kinds of possibilities related to that. And I'm interested in kind of the similar thing with snakes. Snakes are something that evokes fear in people, and as Sarah and I were talking about this morning, that fear results oftentimes in hatred, where people often will kill snakes, and it's in part because I think we have this history, and in part our culture. In the Old Testament, right, it's the serpent, the snake, that's the great deceiver that deceives Eve into eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And some snakes are also venomous, and this is also kind of scary. And for people that aren't experts or really don't know what snake is what, they err on the side of caution, and they kill all snakes just in case the snake that they're dealing with is venomous. And so it's in part understandable. But I'm interested in these kind of ways of noticing, and how space in particular, but this space, the Greenway, creates these possibilities for new kinds of relations, where people can notice the snakes and appreciate them, and come to potentially love them in some kind of way. I know Sarah's in the process of coming to love them, as she's been doing this work with me, and snakes have been a big part of my life for coming on probably 2 decades now, and I think it's important to get people to really care about them, so that we don't just indiscriminately kill them. We're out here the other day walking, and I was carrying my snake hook, and a woman, she stopped me about 25 feet apart because
Social distancing.
we have to social distance. And she asked me if I was out here, if the snake hook was for snakes, and I was like, yeah, I'm an anthropologist and I'm out here. I'm interested in how humans and snakes are using this space together. She told me a story of being bitten by probably a water snake, and the way she described it was probably a diamondback water snake when she was at a lake not too far from here. She was bitten on the toe, and it was a kind of harrowing experience for her. And she also said that not that long ago, she killed a garter snake in her house. And she was very clear. She's like, I know I probably shouldn't have done that, but it was in my house. And so I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So I was like, have you seen snakes out here? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what do you think about that? And she's like, it's fine. Like, I don't mind seeing snakes out here. And I was like, right. So like being out here changes the kind of relationship that you can have with the snakes. And she was like, yeah, I think that that's a fair account of it in so many words. And it was just some, a little bit of ethnographic data that was really illustrating the point that I'm trying to make, and I think the direction this work is going to potentially go in. That this space, it really does create new kinds of possibilities for multi-species relations, and I think the kind of work that Anthropology Beyond the Human or multi-species ethnography does is really important, because anthropology does this, I think, to varying degrees in general, but I think especially like contemporary multi-species ethnography, where there is at least the intention of incorporating broad methodologies and theories and tools and skills from the natural sciences, but trying to integrate them in with tools and theory and ways of noticing in the humanities and the arts. And through developing these really robust, variable, multifaceted toolkits, can we really come to know the world we're around? And if we're going to make, an impact and try to, mitigate the consequences of climate change and the current mass extinction crisis that we're in, or if we're just going to change the way that people relate to snakes so that every time they run into them, they don't freak out and kill them. I think that it takes a really robust toolkit. It takes, I think, really evocative narratives, storytelling that really conveys the kinds of relationships that are possible, and hopefully bring some hope into the world. Anthropologists are often accused of, even by other anthropologists, as being constantly on the defensive, constantly critiquing. And I think that this kind of work is more generative. It's not, there is obviously critique bound up in it, especially in the ways we think about nature and how we set ourselves aside from the rest of the world. But it's also generative. It also gives us an opportunity to create new possibilities, to find new ways of being in the world and new ways of being and becoming together. And as Donna Haraway says, staying with the troubles in a world where we're experiencing these global crises, whether it's global mass extinctions or whether it's a global pandemic that is putting a lot of stress and a lot of hardship on people. Anything you want to add?
I was thinking about purity and danger, actually, with the snakes being in someone's house. That's a place where they're not.
Oh yeah.
They're not about dirt, and they're not where they belong. And so I was just thinking about like how place really shapes the way that we're coming into contact and experiencing these animals, and that the ways of knowing. So you have like the experiences and the knowledge that someone who, like the woman we were talking to the other day, has of snakes, and that's incorporating those experiences so we can understand how we can help people, bring people to a different kind of understanding and experience of snakes.
Yeah, Purity and Danger is a work by Mary Douglas, another anthropologist, who uses this concept of dirt as being matter out of place. So it's fine that there's like soil out in your yard, but it only becomes dirt once it gets tracked into your house. It becomes matter out of place. It's in a space that it doesn't belong. And one of my favorite professors ever, Peta Katz, the example that she gave was she's like, I took a shower today, I wash my hair. Would you say my hair is clean? And of course, everybody in the graduate seminar was like, yes. But if she plucks her hair out and she puts it on the desk, or she puts it in your food, it's no longer clean, right? It becomes dirty in the context that it is. And I've written about this on my website some, with purity and danger in relation to race and violence against particularly black men from police officers.
Especially in particular places. Spaces.
Exactly. Being matter out of place. I don't think reducing people to simple matter is right, but I think it's a helpful framework to think with. And snakes, I think, can absolutely identify, or we can use that same concept to think about, where are snakes and how can different spaces mediate different kinds of relationships and create new possibilities for engagement with these animals, so that people can come to appreciate them and live with them, in various ways. So we're back out on the paved Greenway, and we've still not seen any snakes. We've actually seen very few lizards today relative to what we normally see, and it's because it's so hot. We're going to go hit a couple more spots that I haven't really had anything lately except for scorpions, but at least we'll be out and doing something, and maybe we'll run into something. You never know. Yeah, I didn't expect to see anything. I was thinking about in that regard, like this anthropology beyond the human. Like, can we know anything about how other animals experience the world? And I think the answer is clearly yes to that. One, because like we have agriculture. In part, we are directing it, but we also know how animals or how plants and stuff reproduce, how domestic animals and stuff reproduce. But also, like, I generally know the kinds of places that snakes live. I generally know the kinds of food types that snakes eat, and I can use that information to try to figure out where snakes are. And so I know something about how snakes are experiencing the world. I know something about how the animals that snakes are preying on are experiencing the world as they try to get away from snakes. I can understand how people around me are experiencing all the vast multi-species networks that exist here, in the same way that Singh writes about these mycorrhizal cosmopolitan underground cities where the fungi create these mycorrhizal assemblages with the tree roots breaking down material to create sugars and stuff that then the trees and other animals can use, or other plants and stuff can use. And fungi uses little filaments to catch nematodes to feed on, and the trees can share nutrients with one another through these mycorrhizal cosmopolitan colonies. And they're so intertwined and so codependent on one another, and that's how how environments just generally are. And the mushroom fungi serves as such a great metaphor for how multi-species assemblages really are. And no metaphor is perfect, but I think it's a pretty good metaphor. Walking through the tall grass back here, and just thinking about kind of the nature of grass and the experience of grass. And to snakes, grass is simply like something to hide in. But we have all of these different other kinds of experiences with grass. As something for us to be cut, or there are beautiful wildflowers in it, like over here, that we can appreciate. That what?
Or it makes us sneeze if you have allergies to certain kinds of things that are grass pollens or ragweed.
Yeah, thanks for taking that off. Sneeze. There's our blind snake rocks. We'll check. But grasses kind of come to have different kinds of meanings and thus different kinds of experiences. And often, when we think about grasses, we think about them as just being kind of the background to other things, right? Yeah. But they're alive. They're living. Grass is, alive. They're living organisms. And kind of, I think one of the goals of multi-species ethnography and anthropology beyond the human is to really get to that kind of multi-species being type or kind. So this a world of multi-beings, multi-ways of knowing the world and coming to experience the world and stuff, and really attending to the multiplicity of, ontologies, to use, jargon, but all the different ways of being and knowing in the world that go beyond, potential human, or ways that come easy to us humans in terms of how we come to know the world. And of course, not all humans come to know the world the same way either. We have different cultures, and different cultures come to know and experience the world in different ways. And something as simple as just noticing grass and the multi-species assemblages that kind of exist around the grasses and stuff can open up the world to us a little bit more and help us understand other ways of being in the world. No blind snakes here, and no blind snakes here. All right, we'll keep on looking. As I've been walking around, there's been some chalk written on the Greenway identifying some of the plants and flowers and stuff. I guess flowers are plants. Some of the plants that are around on the edge of the Greenway, which first off is just really interesting and nice for somebody to do. But yet again, to get back to this whole multi-species thing, there's a particular kind of relationship that's being indicated and performed in the making of these little ID tags. Yeah. Temporary ID tags, because they're chalk, they'll wash away if it ever rains again. It's so hot.
And it's a particular way of noticing. So it's like it's cultivating the person who's walking by. There's another one. They're the way that they notice what's around them.
Texas star. Maybe that's those little white ones.
I don't know, because we were having a hard time identifying.
Oh, I bet it's this.
Oh.
That looks like a star. But see, it's a particular way of noticing. I think you're absolutely right, but it also creates an opportunity for us to come to notice things that we otherwise might not notice because somebody else came through and did some kind of
denoted them.
Both intellectual labor, but I think also emotional labor. Like, you have to really care about the plants that come out here.
We're more than like a mile from any entrance to the trail.
So basket flower, we've seen those out. Pink evening primrose, which I'm assuming are these little pink flowers. They're a little bit wilty because it's hot out.
Oh, yeah,
there's a really pretty one.
Yep, that one.
So these little ID tags are creating different kinds of opportunities for noticing. And obviously I'm taking time to even talk about it. So there's this huge effect that's been created in the world, and for the literally dozens of people that'll probably watch this video, and the 2 people that'll get to this point in the video, first off, it's a real treat. Some vultures flying up in the sky. But that's that has affected my day in a positive way.
Mexican hat. So those are these little ones with the
Mexican hat.
Yeah.
These little guys here.
Oh, look at the ants along the.
Oh yeah,
so
there's
trail.
So this is something that we have noticed. You can see the little trail that's been worn by the ants. And we can follow this trail up, and it actually comes up right where we go over to hit one of our spots. And you can really see how pronounced this is. Just an ant trail that they're using.
I've also noticed the way that they come through when they're crossing the trail. Right?
They come right up to here, to their nest. Yeah, and they use the cracks in the pavement to cross the trail so they don't get run over, which is also really cool. All right, we're gonna hit up a couple more spots and then we can get the heck out of here. It's hot. Scorpion, which I knew we would see at least one of. We also have a little wolf spider, tigerosa, which are really pretty. They're I don't know if this is the same species, but they're in the same genus, and some of them get kind of big. They're pretty cool. But striped bark scorpion. This is the bit of bark that we saw, like the 4 or 5 under last time we were out. I'll flip that. fella back over and hit up a couple more spots out here, and then walk back to the car and drink 4 gallons of water. Striped bark scorpion right underneath one of the other bits of bark down here. Just hanging out. I was just remarking to Sarah how it's so funny that they live upside down on these bits of wood. So you always have to be careful if you're out, in a place that has bark scorpions, because they definitely live on barks. If you're flipping over bits of wood, they'll often be on the underside of it. So just be careful where you put your hands so you don't get stung. Bark scorpions, it's quite a painful sting, so you want to be careful around them in places where they are and give them some room. This grass has really grown up. The little trail that we had worn is no more. So Sarah and I are gonna head back to the car. Deer just ran in front of us. But one thing I wanted to do, since I know there's certain people that actually watch these videos, namely my awesome daughter Amelie, who lives with her mom in California. Today she worked on dissecting an owl pellet and identifying the bones that were in the owl pellet. So maybe I'll put a little bit of a clip of a video of her doing some science. And then a shout out to my mom who watches these videos, Susan Wrenn. I always appreciate her, and she's been really supportive of me. And I also know my brother John watches the videos. My mom told me, I think yesterday on the phone, that John's been watching, John Wrenn. And maybe my brother Brandon Johnson watches it. I don't know, I doubt it. It's not really Brandon's thing. I'm the oldest, but I miss my family a lot. They're all in South Carolina. Amy's in California. The rest of my family's in North Carolina, where I'm actually from. And I miss them a lot, and so it's nice to have at least some kind of connection with them, even if it's through this video and phone conversations and the internet, Facebook, etc. Kind of cut the video short, I guess, too, because one thing I know, even though Mom hasn't mentioned it to me, is my sister Jamie, the baby of the family, maybe also watches these. She's subscribed to the YouTube channel, so maybe she watches them. If she does, shout out to Jamie Suzanne Wrenn also. I miss her too, and I hope that she's doing great.
Are ready? Look at that little teeny, where's my finger? Oh, tiny bone. Let's see the thing. Whoa, look at those. I wonder what that could be. Hey, what was it could be a lizard or a mole? What do you think? Oh, here, I'll hold the thing for you. Can you pull them out? Yeah. Hey, nice. I should probably get a paper towel so we can put the bones on it so we don't lose them. It's hard to tell sometimes, though, because the bones are so tiny that they almost look like rocks, huh? Like it could accidentally be a rock. But luckily they're pretty white. Here, okay, here, I'll help you. I'm gonna get a towel. Say hi, wave. Why don't you wave? Look at me. Look up here.